Hey everyone, and welcome. Get ready to go on an incredible adventure across the American West. We're going to see just how smart and resourceful different native peoples were, learning to live and really thrive in some of the most amazing landscapes you can imagine.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start our journey, then head to sunny California, move up to the huge forests of the Pacific Northwest, then into the chilly subarctic, and finish up at the very top of the world in the Arctic. It's going to be quite a trip.
But before we dive in, I've got a question for you. Just think for a second. How does the place you live affect your life? You know, the food you eat, the kind of house you live in, even what you do for fun. Keep that in your head because for the people we're about to meet, the answer to that question was absolutely everything.
So Native Americans settled all over, in places that were completely different from each other. We're talking snowy, frozen regions and super hot, dry deserts. Each spot demanded a totally unique way of life, which led to all these fascinating cultures.
Okay, so the story out west starts a long time ago. Now, what's really fascinating is that a group like the Tlingit, way up in the Northwest, actually share a language family with the Navajo and Apache, who live much farther south. It tells us they probably came from the same ancestors. But because they ended up in such different environments, their whole way of life became completely unique.
Our first big stop? California. Now, this place wasn't home to just one group of people. Oh no, it was this land of incredible diversity, with at least 6 totally different cultural areas. And for each one, where they lived, whether it was the coast, a valley, or a desert, shaped every single part of their lives.
Let's start with the Pomo people in Central California. These guys were masters of using whatever was around them. They hunted, they fished, they gathered acorns, and they lived in these cool roundhouses. But what they're truly famous for are their baskets. And these are not just any baskets. They were woven so tightly you could actually cook in them, and they even used them as cradles for babies. Incredible, right?
Now check this out. Let's compare 2 groups that lived pretty close to each other. You have people like the Pomo on the coast with their amazing basket skills. But then you go just a little bit inland to the Central Valley and you find people like the Miwok. They were surrounded by huge oak forests, so for them, the most important resource was acorns, and they got really good at turning them into flour.
And this quote from a Miwok legend really shows you that deep connection to the land. They believed the forest was the source of life itself. Women would gather tons of acorns, then grind them down to make things like bread and soup. The forest literally fed them and built their world.
Having forests and rivers is great, sure, but what if you live somewhere with almost no water? That was the reality for peoples in Southern California's deserts, like the Coahuila, the Serrano, and the Chemehuevi. How on earth did they survive? Well, it turns out they were brilliant engineers. The Coahuila literally figured out how to make the desert grow food. They built this amazing irrigation system, digging ditches to catch every last drop of rain and guide it into little lakes. And with that water, they could grow their own crops, corn, squash, and beans, right there in the middle of the desert.
All right, let's pack up and head north up the coast to the Pacific Northwest. The environment here is a complete game changer. We're talking giant forests right next to the massive Pacific Ocean. Life here was all about wood and water.
Seriously, in the Pacific Northwest, wood was everything. They used it to build huge houses, sleek canoes for hunting and travel, incredible carved masks for ceremonies, and even everyday stuff like bowls and spoons. And they had this deep belief that you should respect all living things, so they only took what they needed. It's a value that leaders like Chief Seattle later talked about, this idea of living in balance with the world.
You've probably seen a totem pole before, right? Well, for the Tlingit people, these are so much more than just carvings. They're like giant wooden history books for a family. Each symbol or totem represents an animal or a person, and it tells the whole story of a family's history for everyone to see.
Now, to celebrate something big like a wedding, people in the Pacific Northwest would throw a party called a potlatch. And get this, it was a huge celebration where the host family would give away tons of gifts to all their guests. That's how you showed your status and gained respect, by being generous and sharing what you had. And speaking of amazing skills, you have to hear about the Meka people. They were expert whale hunters. They'd paddle out into the ocean in these gigantic canoes that could hold up to 60 hunters at once. And after a hunt, they made sure to use every single part of the whale. Nothing ever went to waste. Okay, time to travel even farther north. We're now entering the subarctic, which is this huge northern forest and marshland called the taiga. And up here, life was all about following the food.
So in the taiga, life followed the great herds of moose and caribou. To survive the freezing cold, they used animal skins to make everything: warm leggings, moccasins, and parkas. And for homes, they would either build quick temporary lean-tos, or for something more permanent, they'd dig their houses partially into the ground to stay insulated from the cold.
And now for our final stop, the very top of the world. Welcome to the Arctic. This is where peoples like the Inuit, the Yupik, and the Aleut became absolute masters of living in extreme, freezing cold. The Arctic is a totally different world from the taiga. This is the tundra. That means a huge open land with no trees, just ice and snow covering the ground most of the year. And the animals are different too. Instead of moose and caribou, people here relied on animals from the sea, like seals, walruses, and whales.
So how in the world did they survive? Through pure genius. They built homes out of blocks of snow, called igloos, or lived in houses dug into the ground to escape the wind. They were master tailors, making super warm clothing out of caribou furs. And they hunted sea mammals through holes in the ice using harpoons. It's just amazing.
You know, one of the most interesting things about traditional Inuit life was their economy. Basically, there was no money. Everything, and I mean everything, was based on sharing and working together. That's how the whole group survived. Today, things have changed a bit. Many Inuit have jobs and earn money, but that spirit of sharing is still a huge, important part of their culture.
And that wraps up our incredible journey. We've seen how things like wood, acorns, water, and even ice shaped entire ways of life. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What's the most important natural resource where you live? And how does it shape your life, right now, today?